Dear listeners, welcome to Australia podcast Scientist on Stage, a podcast that shines light on the human being behind the scientist. A meaningful conversation with the scientist about their own journey, about logic and rationality, and the hidden emotions behind that rationality. These are their authentic stories. Dedication to teach as a coach. Our guest is Isabelle Kohler, founder and CEO of NextMinds and assistant professor at Vrije Universiteit in Amsterdam. We talked about academic environment, dedication and challenges when teaching, bridging the gap between generations, and sharing useful advices for PhD students. Isabelle, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Thank you. I am very happy.
Thank you for joining us. We want to start to actually dig a little bit deeper into who we are as human beings, but because we do not know you yet, would you like to say a few words, who you are, what you do, anything that you would like to share with us?
Yes, so I think you gave already a good introduction saying what I do in terms of work. So I have two hats, as you mentioned in the introduction. So I'm assistant professor at the VU, so originally I'm a pharmacist. First I thought, I want to work in a pharmacy because I really wanted to help people. But then I realized that actually working for, let's say, 40 years in a pharmacy was not something that I found very exciting. So I decided to go towards research. And I really, really liked that. So I basically started on this path. And that was 15 years ago. And I'm still kind of on this path in the Netherlands. Originally, I'm from Switzerland, so I also moved to the Netherlands more than 10 years ago for the postdoc, and I liked it so much that I decided to stay. But then at some point I thought I miss a bit a kind of fulfillment in my career, and I realized that academia is really great for many things. We also know that sometimes it's challenging for others, but it's really great for many things. But I had some ideas and I wanted to develop other talents that I have, and I thought that maybe academia would not give me enough space for that, I would say. So I decided to found my own company that is called NextMinds, so that I can really implement all the ideas that I have, even crazy ideas, and I have a company where I can do that. So now I'm doing that in parallel, and I think I'm quite happy with that.
And now you say crazy ideas. Can you tell us what crazy ideas did you have?
Now I want to save the world. That's what I always say to people. No, I think so what I notice is that I really like to help people, and I really get a lot of joy and fulfillment in doing so, and in sharing knowledge. And especially in academia, when you reach the level where you can teach, then you have the chance to actually shape the scientists of tomorrow and the days after tomorrow, which I find really nice. And what I find really quite impactful is that you're one person, but the knowledge that you can share is to a lot of people, right? So you can have classes with maybe 50 students, but you can also have like 300 students. And basically you can make a contribution in the world by just sharing the knowledge that you have to many people. So that's in academia, but then I realized why would I stop like in the walls of the university? Because, well, today with all the online stuff that we have, you can actually reach the entire world. So that's one of the crazy ideas that I have. Maybe it's not that crazy, but I'm thinking that the knowledge that I have, I would like to share that with way more people that are really in the world, all around the world, and especially those that maybe do not have easy access to the education like we have, but that could have access to this type of knowledge just using the web. And that's something that I would like to achieve at some point, is that really the contribution that I have is actually reaching many, many, many people, but not only in the Netherlands or in Europe, but just like really in all countries, and especially in the ones where they would really strongly like benefit from this type of knowledge.
Mm-hmm. So in fact, actually spreading the word and educating the world,
yes,
in a way, is a mission for you.
Yeah.
I do know that you love education very much, and now you mentioned that it's different when you have a class of 50 students going to higher and higher. How do you see this teaching on being personal teaching in the way where you do know your students, or being in a class where you maybe have more than 100 students, you might not know everybody, or reaching out to the rest of the world and you might not even know the people who are listening to you. How does it feel for you to have that difference?
Yeah, I think so first I do feel a difference indeed, that it's different when you have like a small class than like going towards bigger classes or like 100 or 300 or even more people. And I do feel also a difference when I have the students or the people in front of me, or if I'm behind my computer and I don't see them, or I just speak towards like a black screen or towards Zoom. What I realized is that when I share knowledge, also when I do, for instance, classes only online, I never know actually if students are there. So, you see the name, like the camera is off, you see the name. So you don't know if actually they are there. You don't know if they listen to you, and you don't know if they understand what they're supposed to understand. And it's also the same when, for instance, I create content that I post online with the hope that it will reach many, many people. I actually don't know who will see that. And this is something, like a number of views, for instance, on LinkedIn, great, but then it doesn't really mean anything because you don't know who saw that. But then regularly I get signs from people, so it can be a message or it can be something like an email. Oh, this is so nice, because I'm just like giving the knowledge, as a kind of open the window and just like, let me give this knowledge. And then those who want to take it, they can. And if they want, very great. And then maybe at some point I hear from them, maybe not, but then it still happens, so
and
I
is
find
that the
really
fulfillment that makes you happy as well, right?
Yeah,
that's the part of the fulfillment that you
I think it's,
even though it's after many years.
It is, and it's even more beautiful, I think, that so I had this week actually an example for this, where I was present in the acknowledgement of a thesis of a PhD student, and that's a person that I met many, many years ago, I think 8 or 9 years ago, and I haven't been involved in supervising her in the last 4, 5, 6 years, but still I'm present in the acknowledgements because I was one of the factors that mentored her or guided her or paved the way towards her career or the early steps of her career. And I was not expecting that, because I had no idea that just by saying a few words, 8 years ago, that I would now read these words. That I found that very moving. And then it's also a kind of confirmation that whatever you say, if you want to educate people, that you will reach someone, and sometimes you don't know who or when, but something will happen with that. And I find that really fascinating.
Now I want to challenge you a little bit on this thought, because many people will say, all right, you get the satisfaction, your fulfillment for personal kind of journey, for your own personal journey, as this is the fulfillment and this is what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I could challenge some thoughts here as well, as saying, oh, wait a minute, you're teaching, but in fact you're happy only when you get the feedback back from somebody else in that learning process. What will happen for you if you say somebody will learn something from you and you'll never know about it?
Well, that would be a kind of neutral situation, I think, because then I don't hear from the person, so I don't know if they are unhappy or if, then I don't know, then I'm okay because I don't know. I think the worst is, when we get evaluation from students for courses at the university, and then you see what they really think, and sometimes you do have some like kind of negative comments or suggestions for improvement. I don't think that what makes me happy is this validation. I think you used the word validation, right? I think it's just the extra cherry on the pie that makes it nice, and I think it's already fulfilling, but then it shows me like, oh, that is the way that I have to go, because that's where I'm good, it's showing me like, okay, I have this talent, I know that I have it, I'm enjoying it, I know that this is where I would like to put my energy because this brings me energy. So I actually don't need this validation, because I think I'm quite convinced about that. I really feel that, in me. But then if I get it, I'm like, okay, cool. That means that what I chose and this idea, for instance, of having this company, which was quite a big step, then it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you in this wavelength as well, because when I do teach or I discover something new as a knowledge, that is for me not sufficiently that I feel enlightened. Okay, I have it in my head. I need to share with somebody right away. The sooner the better.
Yeah.
And it's not the fulfillment that, hey, I understood something and I shared that with you, but you also understand it.
Yeah.
It's a different approach there. When I do work with a lot of teachers, some of them, they make sure before they even structure their course, when they do teach science, but can be teaching something else as well. I work with a lot of teachers who are then preparing their lessons in a way that they make sure at the end of the lesson, they will get the best positive feedback from their students.
Yeah.
On the other side, we could also say, I prepare the lesson in such a way that it's a journey for all of us. No matter how the feedback will be back, worse it is, harsher it is in a way, better in fact we do our work. Because if it's just easy and pleasant,
that's not the aim. Yeah, I that's funny because we had a conversation with other teachers in Amsterdam about that, with some students that indeed mentioned that they were not happy with a format that the course was given from someone else. And the teacher was a bit concerned because he said, that's the first time that I hear this type of negative comments, and like even like students that felt like frustrated, that they really didn't like that. And then he was a bit puzzled because he said like, okay, I'm asked to have like this blended learning and all these things that we're supposed to implement, but then the students say they're not happy with that. And then we had a discussion about that, and I said, but it doesn't mean, like, students that are not happy or that are a bit annoyed by the format, it doesn't mean that they don't learn what they're supposed to learn. So our aim is not to make people happy. And for me, that's hard because I'm a people pleaser, so I really want to make them happy. But no, like, the aim is to basically make sure that they learn what they're supposed to learn in the course or in the program that they're following. And also sometimes I think they have to be pushed out of their comfort zone. So if they feel frustrated or not happy or something, then maybe it's actually good, because at time point zero, they're not happy, but maybe 6 months later, they're like, oh yeah, I learned actually something when this happened at the university.
And in fact, you do listen to your students, what they did experience and how that experience is. Also as an improvement for yourself to think, how can I make their experience even better? But it's not necessarily that only the experience is right, but also the knowledge is building.
Yeah.
I wonder where and how do you set that border when you say, I'm a people pleaser? And then from the perspective now of the teaching, but can be also other perspectives, where do I draw the border on, I want so a certain quality, but not necessarily then everybody is happy, and the struggle of pleasing people and make them happy? How do you do that?
Yeah, I think it's an ongoing process. I don't even have, I think, a definite answer to that, because I think it's like really dynamic. But it's and it's like beyond, I think, like making students happy, let's say, because I have that just in general, that I would like to please people. But then you realize, like, at the moment that it starts to have impact on, I don't know, for instance, that I feel like affected by feedback, or that I have issues to fall asleep because of that, or things like that, and I'm like, whoa, wait, this is like, you can't be happy with everyone, and that's not the aim. So then I have to like really be, I think, aware of it. And if I realize that I'm kind of thinking about it more than I'm supposed to, so let's say more than 5 minutes, then it means like, there's something in me that I didn't react well, so there's something that maybe I need to like, think a bit about that and make sure I don't change.
Now, if you're teaching, did you observe anything when it comes to generation differences, and maybe how you learn as a student, and how you think about things, and how the students that you have now in your class, how do they learn? Is there a generation difference? How do you see it? How is the learning process there? Maybe different or the same?
Oh, yeah, that's that. I find it's really different, and I'm thinking now, when I was studying, that was, let's say, 15 to 20 years ago, so that's a big age gap, let's say. And I think the major difference, for students, but also, for instance, for PhD students and everyone being in the lab, is the attention span, and especially all the everything related to a phone or to a computer that can just like take your attention away from what you're supposed to focus on. I think my first smartphone was in the middle of my PhD, if I'm correct, and it was like not much, you couldn't like spend your time on social media, or let's say lose your time on social media when your experiments were not working or something like that. So it was easier, I think, to focus on something and then to keep doing it for longer. And it was also easier to compare yourself less with others, because the only comparison that you could make were with people in the same lab, for instance, or students in your same class, like thinking, oh, this person got a better grade, why, and things like that, but not like the entire world that you see online with all these people bragging about, ooh, I got a grant, or ooh, I got a 10 for my internship, or things like that. And then I'm thinking about the students. I really admire this generation that is like, has to focus, and they have like a phone somewhere in their pocket, and we all know that it's like super easy to take it, at the moment you're bored and you have like a teacher that is saying something that is boring, and you're like, oh, I want to take my phone, to look at something that gives me dopamine. And this we didn't have, and I think it was easier than to focus. The difference is that I notice now in the students is that I have the feeling they want things very fast, and they don't accept or even imagine that you actually need time also in the process of learning during a course, that it just takes time to learn skills. And that, for instance, if they write a piece of work, especially with writing, if they write a piece of work and they send that to me very fast, and I will of course take the time to give feedback on that, and for me giving feedback is to help them understanding and grow in terms of knowledge and in terms of skills. And then they receive this feedback and they're like, I thought it was like done, I want that to have it like done, because they wanted the task to be just like tick the box and then that's it, move to the next one.
In other words, we do want something, it is finished, there is no space anymore to actually improve it, because we are done with it, we move on for the next one. The speed is faster.
Yeah, I think, to like move from task to task. And I think that's also what you see if they need to look for information. It's like so easy to get information. For us, it was like you needed to, I don't know how we looked for information before internet. Can you imagine? You had to go to find a book in the library. Where was the library? You had to first find the library and then find the book and ask the person and find in the book the information you were looking for. And this, I see like also the way that they look for information. It's just like so fast. Like also with AI and ChatGPT and the others, I see also how they use that. And yeah, it's like the ease in getting familiar with these tools and using them for their work. But then sometimes I do miss a bit more, like just to slow down and to think and to understand what they are doing. So it may be a bit sometimes shallow. So like deliver a lot of output, but sometimes like that the quality could be a bit more, or the level of information could be a bit more in-depth, and that's somewhere that's maybe this generation is different than back then.
I recall indeed the moments of going to the library, but indeed first making a card to the library. Then you have a card to the library, you go to the library, look for certain information, look for the book. You get a book, it's not the book that gives you the information, it's the next one and it's the next one. Along the way we might learn other things as well, while now it's very easy for all of us just to ask AI, what's the answer to this question? It's a question on how much we understand that, how much we go into the depth.
Yeah.
And I feel at times that the information is in our computers, on our slides, but not on our heads.
Yeah.
So in how much do we really understand something into sufficient depth that next time when we are needing to solve a problem, can we again access the information that we have, but do we make the right correlations?
Yeah, I think I see that also now that you're mentioning that, I see that also when it comes to experiments. So as analytical chemist, you work with instruments, or sometimes with a computer, but most of the time you work with an instrument that you need to understand how it works to get the data that you want to get. And the instruments 20 years ago were quite high level, let's say, but like it also improved, and in such a way that now it's really plug and play for many of them. So basically you put your sample that you want to measure, and then you put some conditions, and then you press play, and then you will at some point get some information. in a kind of, not easy, that's not true, but more straightforward than it was before. And I find that it's really great, because you're thinking like, okay, in a company setting, you know, if you need to like really measure a lot of samples, you don't have the time to have your instrument that is not working. But then, for instance, as a PhD student or as a student doing an internship, I want them really like to know, you know, to even like open the instrument as far as they can, and then just like remove pieces and things like that, and understand what's happening. You know, if you're moving piece A, what's happening, if you're changing the condition, and why is it happening. So if you increase the temperature, whatever, like why do you see such a difference in your data output, and that they understand. And because the instruments are working quite well and they are quite plug and play now, it's a kind of yes, no answer now. It's like, oh, they see the output, they're happy, you know, and they don't see it. It means, oh, there's a problem. And here I'm a bit slightly worried, or let's say concerned, that we're a bit losing in this really deep understanding on what is the mechanism, or what are the mechanisms behind this happening in the instrument, or using the techniques that we are using. Yeah.
So what you're saying, let's slow down a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Learn to be patient.
Oh, yeah.
Go a little bit in depth into the knowledge that we do have.
Yeah.
Because that will also make the steps later on for us, for understanding as a scientist, what will be the next steps. I wonder then for you, because the transformation of all the tools that we have online has an effect on your students, but also on us, on all of us. How is it for you? How did your world has changed there? Not necessarily only as a teacher, but in general as a person. How did AI transform you in a way, and the way you work?
No, that's a lot. I remember my first reaction was a bit being panicked in some way, as a kind of resistance to change. And that's a bit weird, because I'm a researcher, so I like innovation and everything, but it was like so huge. So this is going to have a strong impact on our work. But I was more like thinking about the negative aspects, such as, I don't know, like we're not going to have a job anymore, or people are just going to become like not humans anymore. And I'm someone who likes human, right? So I want like to still see a world that is made out of humans with emotions. So for me, like thinking of all this AI coming, I was a bit worried. And I remember thinking, okay, if I have to be prepared for the coming years, decades, I need to put my eggs, or some of my eggs, in a basket that focuses on humans. And that's why also one of the reasons why I decided to follow training in becoming a coach and a counselor. So I'm gonna put my eggs into coaching and more, let's say, closer to the human. And besides also, well, next to that, also of course using AI for some tasks that I'm doing at work. That I also actually like doing that, because it brings me some more time and space for other things like thinking, you know, or creativity.
Yeah, and in which way this transformation we see as a positive effect, and in which way this transformation will bring something new.
Yeah.
We've seen that happens with the mobile phones and having the patients in the class and the learning process.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the NextMinds story as well, and you focusing on the humans and the human aspects as well. And you said, I was very keen to learn more of that aspect. Would you like to share with us, what did you learn as a coach and supporting the people around us in that process of reminding ourselves who we are as humans? Would you like to share something with us?
So I'm focusing with NextMinds mostly on PhD students and students, so let's say early career researchers. Yeah, that PhD students have a lot of challenges, let's say, that are quite common and that are in some way caused by the environment where they are in. So academia is like a special environment. I think that bring a lot of stress and pressure, because a lot of things are expected from PhD students, and depending also where they are, it can be quite challenging environment as well. So if you're lucky, they have been maybe like in a company for an internship, or at least in a different university, they really miss a bit of a outer perspective to see that, or let's say like to have the chance to take one step back, or maybe 10 steps back from their own point of view, and really look at their own life and own work from an outer perspective to realize like, oh, but it's also because academia is made like that right now.
There is no fault of the young generation that this is the environment that shapes us in any way, but it's the perspective from outside that it's an obligation in a way for all of us to show that perspective and to understand what is happening and what is the preparation maybe also for the next step outside the normal study trajectory and the academic environment and what will be next. So I see it as an obligation in a way to show that perspective.
I think I like also you use the word it's not their fault, and that's also something that I say often to mostly PhD students, because they think like, okay, if a PhD doesn't work, their PhD doesn't work, or if they haven't published the X number of papers they have to publish these things, they will quite quickly say, oh, but that's because I'm stupid, or I'm not up to standards, or I experiments don't work, so that's because I don't know how to make them work. But no, that's not true. They also don't realize that it's that their work or their success, let's say, if we measure success in this case in terms of, for instance, number of papers or achievements during the PhD, is very dependent also on others. But to go back also to what you said about our obligation, I think that's something very, very important, because for those who indeed studied, so they spent 5 years at the university, and then you have like the time of your PhD to think already like, okay, what do I want to do? Which direction? What do I find nice? How do I profile myself? What are my skills? Where am I good at? Where are my talents? Things like that. So there we really need to make something.
So in a way, all the human skills that you are very keen to support PhD students with, to show them the outside world and to prepare for them.
And to make them realize what does it mean, like human skills, and how do you sell that then to a potential person that will hire you at some point.
And very often I do believe that we think or we've seen the world outside, but we have again the obligation to show that to the PhD students. The question that I often have is, how do we prepare ourselves for what will be 2050 that we don't even know what will happen? In the past I used to say, we don't know what will happen in 2025. We are now in 2025. How do we prepare for the 2050 when we do not know what will happen next year?
Yeah, that's hard, huh? I started my contract at the Vrije in 2020, and I had originally a contract for 5 years. So I have a permanent contract, I'm good, but I had a contract for 5 years, and I remember 2020, so I started in the middle of the pandemic, and I was thinking, wow, 5 years, it's short, and at the same time, it's so long. And I had some plans, and now I'm thinking, I'm looking back, in the mirror of the last 5 years, and I'm thinking, look at what happened, like totally unexpected things as well, like a company that was not my plan, like maybe somewhere in my brain, but I was not conscious of that. And then it just came in 5 years, that's like super short. So you're asking me now for 2050. And I think the world is also changing faster than the time and the capacities that we have to actually implement changes. So even sometimes I'm thinking like, oh, I could implement things like in education, to make it more online or blended learning or things like that. But then I need to find the time and the tools to make that happen. And once this is ready, they're already like a new iteration of something that got improved. So I don't have an answer to this question.
And next year will be completely different.
Yeah.
And it's mostly to think about how do we prepare for the unknown? How do we deal with changes that are coming again and again and again, or many other things that are not even maybe in our influence zone at all?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, what can you change yourself? And what can't you change, and how do you look at that, and how do you still stay happy and fulfilled while these things are happening? But I think some of the aspects that you mentioned are also something that you learn, for instance, during your PhD, like, how to deal with the unknown. Like, you always know where you start, I think, but then like you have like so many unknowns. Maybe they are smaller, of course, but still, like, I think even as a PhD student, if you don't realize at the moment that it's happening that you're actually developing skills like of resilience, for instance, you will develop these skills after like a couple of years, I think if you look back, you will be like, oh yeah, remember I had like this unknown thing happening. How did I react to that? Oh, I actually built resilience. So I think maybe it's a kind of like we are adjusting, but like in the background is something that is happening in the background of our work and our daily life.
We should embrace it maybe as a journey, and not always as having it something concrete.
That's a very good one. But then if you say that, I think to starting PhD student, or maybe no, starting PhD student usually are in the honeymoon phase for like a couple of months, or they're like, whoa, I'm gonna save the world, or like have an impact on the society. But then I think after 6-7 months, they're like, poof, it's a bit more complex. I think if you come to them and you say, yeah, it's gonna be a journey, you're gonna learn so much and everything, it's not easy to again slow down and think like, okay, it's gonna be okay. I have to trust the process. Not a sentence I like, trust the process. It's gonna be okay, I will manage. Because I think the reaction that many have, and especially a bit later in the PhD, is like, oh, I still haven't published my papers, and oh, I still need to write that, and will I ever find a job? I even don't know which job and everything. It's like panic after panic. And even though most of them, they still end up like in a nice position and everything, and they're happy. But then during the PhD, like this, maybe I should like say more often, like, it's a journey. Trust the process. It's gonna be okay. But give it the time actually to be okay. Yeah.
The question that I still have is, do we always have to run after the publications?
That's a big question, I think. That one of the major questions that I also hear a lot is like, what are the rules? Like, is it like university that said we need papers? Or is it like the supervisor that wants to have papers and impact factor? And oh no, now impact factor is not relevant anymore. It's supposed to be the quality. Is it okay if it's submitted only, or does it have to be accepted and everything? And it's like a big concern, which is a bit... So I find it sad in the way that then everyone basically focuses on papers as an output. Like, oh, I want to have this paper because I need that. But then it's like, tick the box of this paper. And then we lose, like, I have the feeling, the original aspect of research, which is supposed to be bring knowledge, I think. At least that's my definition. For me, it's really like bring knowledge and ideally to the society. But like bring knowledge, and then bringing knowledge to a piece of paper, online even, then yes, so what? Like, this shouldn't be like the end, the end goal. And I don't like this idea that we're training PhD students from the beginning saying, okay, your end goal is basically to have these, let's say 4 or 5 papers, because then they feel like, oh, I need to write these papers. But then they don't realize like, okay, what about the quality? And instead of a paper, can we write something else like a patent, or, have a different impact on the society in some other ways?
In fact, the reality would be at the end when we go in pension and we talk with our grandchildren, what did you achieve in life? Then we say so many papers with such a high impact.
Yeah.
What is your final advice in general? What advice would you give to a PhD student?
Trust the process, like really, in the sense that from day one, you will learn something. But let's say the visible outcome of it is going to be later. So there's a kind of delayed gratification, which is maybe hard to imagine. But like, if you're a PhD student and you're struggling, because at some point you will have something where you're thinking, you go home in the afternoon or in the evening or during the weekend, and you're like, why did I do that? And will I manage and everything? Like, trust the process, because everything you're doing at some point will lead to an outcome. Would that be a paper, or just you having learned something, or learn how to be resilient, learn how to deal with feedback, learn how to write and things like that. So these are skills that will be anyway useful at some point. You are working towards your own growth, not only professional growth, but also personal growth, because I think people also like grow a lot during this phase of their life. And I think like really like remember, trust the process. Like at some point something will happen, even though you believe it won't. I'm sure it will.
I will come to you.
Yeah.
Thank you for this advice. Thank you for sharing with us. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
That was really great. Thanks.